Thank you for visiting Past the Wire TV, the YouTube channel of PastTheWire.com.
And more spirit takes over coming past the wire. It will be more spirit to win the Los Alamitos Futurity by a length and a half.
This is just an unbelievable day for Bob Baffert and Mike Smith. They are unstoppable. More Spirit has dominated the Met Mile. He won it by 7 lengths. Horses have reached the starting gate. It's post time. Cold Front, the favorite, comes forward. And they're into the stretch. Cold Front put to the 10. Cold Front does it again. Firing the field of the Amsterdam.
Well, we are back with another episode of Past the Wire TV with our good friend Ray DeStefano. We never run out of things to talk about with Ray. Ray's got more stories than probably we have time for. On the last show with Ray, we were talking about his time with Murty Brothers and flying horses, some quite well-known famous horses all over the world. So why don't we go back to that? And on this show, Ray, we'll finish up with Murty Brothers and flying horses all over the world, and hopefully we got no other fake autographs going on out there.
Speaking about the fake autographs, they retired Jerry Koosman's jersey number 36 on Saturday, I believe, at Shea Stadium.
So that autograph's probably worth more money now.
Of course. And the only problem with that, and a first-time starter named Koosman ran
I saw that.
At Saratoga, I think the same day or the next day. But I'm thinking Tom Peavy was a Kentucky boy. I don't think he followed the Mets, but he followed what I was doing when we were in the store, which happened to be a fabric store. No wonder I didn't buy anything. I didn't want fabric. And he, all of a sudden he knew he was a Met player named Jerry Koosman, and he had a sign. I have a feeling the autographs over in Japan might be Jerry like Cuzmann, or, I don't think he knew how to spell Koosman. I never asked him. So the Grody, at least they're legit as far as the spelling. The Jerry Koosman, I'm not quite sure. Anyway.
Wait, before we get to that, I got to take advantage of something here. All right. I wasn't going to do it. I didn't even think about it, but it came into my mind now. And I figured we might as well take advantage of it. I would like you to weigh in on the race at Saratoga that I showed you when that horse come out of the gate a little early, got put back in, they broke it right away. And, I'll go on record as saying I think it was one of the worst non-calls and just egregious. I think it was a horrible non-call. I think it was complete. I mean, I can't even put it into words. I think it was one of the worst things that I put it right up there with when they took down Alamuse, the wrong horse at Saratoga, and said, "Oops, we're sorry." I think that was that bad, honestly. I really do. I think, and what irked me about it, Ray, is everybody said, well, and the stewards came out and said, well, we didn't think it gave the horse an unfair advantage.
Gave him a disadvantage.
I agree. I would agree with that in a second. I don't think it did give him an unfair advantage. I think it gave him a pretty significant disadvantage.
And the jockey was, not going with the break. He was, the guy was holding him, but you sent me the video. Did he break through the gate and they reloaded him?
No, he broke through the gate, they backed him in, and then they started it.
Oh, he broke through the gate before the start.
Right. Exactly what I showed you. Yeah, exactly.
I only saw the start.
Okay, that was the start. No, that's all that happened. What you saw. He didn't break through. It was just that start.
Yeah, but they didn't back him back in.
No.
Yeah, okay. So the race was gone, but again, in the gate, everything is such split second. And when a horse does that, your reaction is to hold him, hold him back. But the break came just, I mean, the guy was probably already mashing down on the starting button, but the guy had the horse in hand. The rider wasn't breaking, he was holding on. So, yeah, he did break a step ahead of everybody, but it was not an advantage because he didn't break cleanly. He was being held. It wasn't natural for him. So,
Right.
so I agree with you 100%. It wasn't an advantage. It was a disadvantage.
Right. But can you justify by saying that, well, sometimes a horse gets away bad, we don't give refunds for that? I don't think that was the case here. I think there was obviously an unfair start, but I'm sure that's what they would argue.
In all the years I worked on the gate, I don't remember one race. I don't remember one race where they said declared a horse a non-starter. Things are so different today. I mean, so different. But I think in my day, I don't know what they would have done. I mean, we had, the stewards for Kenny No and Tommy Trotter, and yeah, I mean, we had some big time stewards. I don't know what they would have done. That's a tough call. But I don't remember any. I don't remember any race. Maybe there was, but that a starter was declared a non-starter. Oh, Craig Fane. I don't know if you remember that.
Finger Lakes jockey, right?
Came down 6 furlongs, and I feel so bad for him. Young kid riding in New York for the first time, 6 furlongs on the inner track, and his horse broke through the doors before the start. He didn't realize that. He thought it was the start, and he thought he went wire to wire. And the people in the stands were cheering him. He probably figured, wow. But we're all standing in the gate with our horse. You couldn't laugh. You had to laugh, but you felt sorry for the kid. He thought he went wire to wire, and what an easy game. So he was a non-starter, but that was obvious. He started, but he started his own race. Anyway,
that's a classic too.
We'll do some more gate stories. I got a couple of good stories that I thought of, maybe next week or the following week. But I did want to mention about Jerry Kuzman, his number being retired, ironically, and then that horse running at Saratoga the other day. I did want to correct the date. I said Secretariat's last race was September 28th at Woodbine. It was October 28th, not the end of the world, and nobody called me on that. And Dr. Fega, we talked about great horses that I was associated with or worked with. And Ruffian, I only watched her race. My association with her really was for 4 or 5 hours in a tragic situation where she was, the end of her life. So, I mean, did I work with her? Yes, but I certainly had nothing to do with her racing career. Secretariat, did I work with him? Yeah, I unloaded him from a plane and put him in the van and stood there for 5 minutes alone with him and gave him a haircut. So, okay, technically, I never worked with Dr. Fega, but I spent a lot of time with Dr. Fega. In 1967, when he was a 3-year-old, and he was, a great 2-year-old and a really up and coming 3-year-old, him in Damascus. I used to finish work at Pancho's barn and barn 52 and walk down to barn 39, which was John Nehru's barn. The first time I went in. Mr. Nehrud was a nice guy. I was a kid, 17-year-old kid. And I said, could I see Dr. Fega? That was the buck passer the year before when I went to Eddie Neroy's barn. And he took me in front of the stall, and we stood there. I was in awe. This horse was, and that was before he really became Dr. Fega. So I made it a habit. His assistant trainer, Joe Dmitrievich, he's passed away also. Really nice guy. I used to go down quite often to see Dr. Fager, just to stand in front of his stall. And Joe would take me in. And then it got to the point where I'd get there and Joe would say, just go in, you know. So I spent a lot of time one-on-one with Dr. Fager. I should have got his hair, his autograph, a picture. But anyway, never worked with him, but spent a lot of time oogling him, And Nehrud let his forelock grow to give him the impression of kind of like a wild horse. If you look at some of the pictures, his forelock is really long. He looked like a wild horse, with the hair blowing in the breeze. So I wanted to set that record straight. I never worked with Dr. Fager, but I spent a lot of time with him. It was a couple of funny stories. Dahlia is a great story. I could speak about Dahlia forever. She came in 1973 for the first time, and I went to quarantine to pick her up because horses had to do quarantine, for 3 days. And it was in the middle of the night. And we got to Barn 40 because Maurice Zobert was friendly with Lenny Imperial and Dominic Imperial. That was their barn, 40, right next to Dr. Fager's barn. So, I dropped her off, and that was kind of the last I had to do with her, Then she and that year she won she went from Belmont, she won the Washington, D.C. International and went back. Dahlia ran in 6 different countries: Italy, Ireland, France, England, Ireland, France, Italy, United States, and Canada. She was really considered the first international star. She beat the boys. She raced everywhere. She was really the first international star, and she had the record. She earned $1.5 million and change. The highest money-winning mare of all time. Well, she came in 73, 74, 75, and then she stayed in 75. She went out to California with Whittingham. He took over, but I'll get to that in a second. She came back in 74, but instead of going to Barn 40, Imperial's barn, they put her up in Mackenzie Miller's barn, Rokeby Stable, that had like a little indoor track. It was like a high rent district. And Bob Murty, she came 2 years with Bernard Robine. In France, the exercise boy is the groom. And so Bernard Robine, who also was the assistant trainer for Maurice Zobert, came with Cesar Hammy with Hippodamia, was a hoist a flag filly who she stayed here and she ran a few times in 1975, was graded stakes place, won a few small stakes. I think she just came as a training partner with Dahlia. But Bob Murty asked me to just go spend the day there. These guys don't know English, go help them. So I went every day, maybe about 2 weeks, and I really got to know Dahlia. I walked her, held her for her bath, held her for the blacksmith, walked her to and from the track. And I was just smitten with her. I sent you a picture, maybe you'll post it. She had a really Arabian, she had such a pretty face, a dish face. And I think, number one, she was my favorite filly of all time. I think Dr. Fager was my favorite male horse of all time. And right now, I'm not going to say who was the best horse, in my opinion. We'll talk about that another time. But she, like Secretariat, in the time I spent, the 5 minutes I spent with him in the van, I could tell that he just really had such a presence, such intelligence. But I got to know Dahlia very, very well. And she was really the smartest. I don't know if that's what she had such a way about her. she had so much class. So, she ran in 73 from Imperial's barn and won the Washington, D.C. International. Then in 74, in October, after, she was here 10 days, 2 weeks, she ran in the Man of War. And then she went to Canada and she won the Canadian Invitational. And then she went to DC to try to win that race again. She ended up finishing third. But after the Man of War, and maybe a day or two before she left for Canada, and parting is such sweet sorrow, I really hated to see her go. But I was holding her for the blacksmith, and I said, you know what? I don't know if you can see that.
Absolutely.
I said, can I have a shoe? And I should have gotten all four, because the other three probably got thrown away. So I've had this on my wall forever. But the funny thing, not funny, this was in 74, and I never saw her again until 76, when Whittingham had her and she raced in California. Her career was kind of winding down, although she won the Hollywood Invitational out there and another big race. She certainly wasn't the great filly, but she was, anybody would love to have had her on her final year. But she came back in October of 76 to run in the Man of War again. She ended up finishing off the board, and I was working on the gate. And it was so wonderful for me to see her. The horses come up to the gate before the start and they jog around and they loosen up. And it was just so wonderful for me to see her. I handled a different horse that day. I guess if I asked, but you never really did that. That was kind of, you never asked. But if I asked if I could handle Dahlia, Frank might have, wondered why, and he might have said, okay. But I was assigned a different horse, and I saw her. She didn't run well. She was off the board, but it was just so nice to see her again after 2 years. And Laurie Connolly was telling me she went over to France in 75, I think she said, to spend some time with Maurice Gilbert, and they trained so differently. She said that they would tack the horses up at his yard, which was a half an hour walk to Chantilly, to the track. They would tack the horses up. Laurie said they'd get in the car, drive to the racetrack, go to a coffee shop, have coffee, and by the time they were done, the horses arrived. But she said they'd walk through a village, cobblestone streets, by stores, people. Maybe that's why she was so relaxed. It was just something about her. But the way they train in France is so different. So a half hour there, and then maybe a half hour jogging through the woods. Some horses, she said, would go faster. It would depend on what Gilbert wanted to do. And a half hour walking back. So, almost an hour and a half, one horse. Here in New York, an hour and a half, there's 4 sets, 5 sets from a trainer. Boom, boom, right. Boom. It's so different. And she said she was so impressed with that, with the way that they train. Even the cobblestone streets. I mean, it's not easy for a horse to walk on, but they handled it, very well. And that's Dahlia. To this day, my number one sweetheart filly mare. Dr. Fega was my boy. And Buck Pass, a close second. He was my first boy. There was 2 stories about flying horses that I didn't get to last week. Once I was on a plane. A lot of times these cargo planes would come in from California, and they take some cargo out, put the horses in or more cargo. And I was going over to France with England, France, I don't remember, with 3 horses, and they backed the pallet probably somewhere in the middle of the plane, and behind the horses was a white 1976. This was in the fall of 75. So there was a white 76 brand new Cadillac sedan. And behind that was a black one. And I asked the loadmaster, what's the story with these? And he said, the white one is for the daughter of the Shah of Iran. That was in 76. He got deposed in 79. And the black one was either for his son or his nephew or somebody. But the white one was for his daughter. And that was the one right behind the horses. Well, when the horses are in the middle or the back of the plane, you got to stay with them because anything can happen. If you go up front, something happens, that's trouble. If the horses are in the front of the plane, you can sit in the cockpit, which was always interesting. Well, I had to stay with the horses. And I opened the door of the white Seville and the keys were on the passenger seat. So when they get there, well, from New York to either London or Paris, I think it was Paris, and the horses behaved, and I could see them right in front of me through the windshield. I reclined the seat and just kicked back the whole trip. I only wish I knew I would have bought some of my 8-tracks because an 8-track play, I would have been able to listen to music. But I always said, if the Shah of Iran knew how I soiled the seat of the princess, I probably would have been beheaded.
Maybe.
But, I don't think he would have liked it, but I made sure I cleaned it off, and I don't think anybody ever found out about that. But I sat in it before she ever drove it, and they only had it 3 years, and then they had to leave the country. Another time, a very similar situation. A plane came from California going to France. This was for sure France. And they backed the horses in. I said, what the heck? There was, and I'll show you a picture of it. Oh, where is it? I don't know where I left the phone. Anyway, here it is. Here it is. This was right next to me, where they left the horses. In the position right next to me was, hang on, people. It's worth the wait. It's worth the wait. The head of King Kong. Now, this was in the fall of 75, and King Kong, the movie, came out in 76, but they were doing a promotion in Paris. That picture was taken with some beautiful model on the Champs-Elysees sitting on his head. He was 42 feet high, one position which was right next to the horses. For some reason, the horses seemed a little bit, I was nervous, but another position was an arm, another position was the other arm, his legs. There was like 8 or 10 different pallets that they were going to assemble him with. And let me find it again. Where this girl is, and now this is right next to the horses. So where this girl is sitting, I don't know if you see it. Can you see it?
Yeah.
I slept up there. The whole trip. I could look down on the horses, and I slept. And then I saw a week or so later, they did the promotion in France. They built him. And I said, hey, there's my buddy, and I beat his face before that pretty model did. And just things like that, as a 22, 23-year-old kid, just a lot of fun, in Japan with Tom Peavy. One day we went on the roof of the Kyo Plaza Hotel. I told you, they put us up in really nice hotels. And there was a huge Japanese flag with spotlights. And I said, man, that would be nice to take home. So in the middle of the night, we went up there and we started to take it down and cut it. And a security guard came up, no English, no Japanese, but he let us know, and it's probably true, and he probably didn't mean it, but he wanted to scare the shit out of us, which he did. He let us know that the penalty in Japan for theft, he went, cut off. and back up the flag with all due respect, and back to our room. And we didn't come out for the next day.
Good idea.
You know, the title of this show is Groovy, so I guess I got to get to Groovy. I went in 1985, 84, the first Breeders' Cup with Slew of Gold. The next year, the Hills and Taylors ran Slew the Dragon in the Hollywood Park Invitational. And I went out with Slew the Dragon, you know, and I spent a week, but he didn't spend as much time out there as Slew of Gold, and he won that race. The next year, and I was always close with Jose Martin because of my connection with Frank Martin, Groovy, who, you know, I think we mentioned this, who has the two fastest speed buyers ever recorded, and they were in back-to-back races. In June of '87, he won the True North and 132 buyer, and I think the race before that was the Rose Bend 133. So back-to-back 133 and 132. That's unheard of, and you know, and that's still the highest buyers of all time. But Jose asked me to take Groovy out. So I went 84, 85, then Groovy 86. And that was at Santa Anita. But I came right home. I didn't stay out there. And he got beat by Smile. And I think Pine Tree Lane, a filly, finished second. He finished fourth, I think. No, let me just, yeah. He finished fourth. Then the next year in '87, same thing. I went out with Groovy, and that was at Hollywood Park, and he got beat by another filly, Very Subtle. So, you know, he ran as favorite in 2 Breeders' Cup sprints, and you know, and he got beat. I think it was '86 where he finished fourth. Yeah, Smile, Pine Tree Lane, there was another horse, and then Groovy, and then he finished second in '87 behind Very Subtle. But, you know, I mean, obviously, this is not a whole show about Groovy, but I just, you know, wanted to say how impressed I was. You know, I don't know Equibase numbers and the Ragozin sheets. You know, I've always just, because I'm not a handicapper, you know that. But I know buyers. I know a good buyer. And 133 buyer and a 132 back-to-back, that's like Joe DiMaggio's 54-game hitting streak. I mean, that just doesn't happen. He was a very fast horse. He was a very good-looking horse. And, I mean, I've flown with a lot of horses that are like teddy bears. Some aren't. We have some nightmares, bad horses, bad actors. But, you know, Slew of Gold was a good horse to fly with. But Groovy, it was almost like there was a stuffed animal in the stall. Takeoff, landing. He never, ever, you know, ever moved the muscle. He was a delight to work with. You know, I think he had several trainers, you know, but I think Jose Martin was the last trainer. He was by Norcliffe. So, you know, to be a sire, you really have to have the male lineage. Norcliffe was Buck Passer. Buck Passer was a great broodmare sire, but wasn't a sire of sires. So Groovy really wasn't a success as a sire. And I'm watching the clock, and I said, I'm going to keep this one short. Two incidences when I was flying horses in June of 75, and I started on the gate in 76. I was coming into Kennedy Airport, final approach, I mean, right before you land, with some horses. I have no idea from where. California, I really don't know from where. And the plane really rocked. I mean, really rocked. I mean, you know, the horses handled it well. You know, usually that could really set a horse up. And we landed a few seconds later. And as we were taxiing, you know, everything was calm. The horses were okay. The pilot said the plane behind us just crashed on Rockaway Boulevard. That was an Eastern Airlines flight from New Orleans. I think 123 people died. There were 11 survivors. You probably remember it. There was, what we hit was the beginning of, what do they call it? A microburst or a downdraft. And the plane behind us must have got caught right in the middle of it. And it hit the lights, this is the way to the airport, and right over Rockaway Boulevard, it went down. So lucky number one. Lucky number two had really nothing to do with horses. And then we're really going to end it because I don't want to press my luck. In the 80s, mid to late 80s, my sister lived in London with her husband and children. He was in the Navy, and he worked in London in the same building. Used to show me this was Winston Churchill's office, although that wasn't the office he worked in. And it was the suburbs. You get on the train, like from here to the city, 25, 30 minutes. So I used to go every year at Christmas. I used to get on a plane, find a horse going over there, get a flight over, get my ticket back, and spend a week or whatever with my sister. And there's no place like London at Christmas time. Selfridges and Oxford Street and Father Christmas. And, it was such a special thing. So I wanted to go over in 88, but I couldn't find a flight, no horses going over. So, the big spender, I bought a round trip ticket, to London, and then to return on December 21st. This was 1988. And a week before I was supposed to leave, my sister called and said, we decided to go to Rome for, the kids are off. It would be nice. We're here in Europe. We might as well. So meet us in Rome. So at the time, there was no internet. I went to the travel agent. I wish I had taken a copy of the ticket, a photocopy, gave in my tickets to London and traded them in for tickets to and from Rome. Well, the plane that I was on, that I changed, was Pan Am 103 that crashed over Lockerbie. I had a seat on that plane. And if it wasn't for the change of plans to go to Rome, we wouldn't be doing this,
Wow.
I've been doing a lot of things. And my parents were coming. They were on the Belt Parkway, Cross Island, the Belt. And they heard on the radio that Pan Am 103 crashed, had crashed, and everybody was dead. And that's the flight that anybody in my family would go over, would come back on Pan Am 103. Came in at 3:00 in the afternoon. And for a minute or so, or less, I don't know, they forgot that I was on Pan Am 101 from Rome. They forgot that I had changed. They thought I was on 103. My father pulled over to the side of the road, like Conduit Boulevard. And then they realized I wasn't on that plane. So it's twice I got lucky. And then the third time is meeting you. So I get a chance to
I don't know about that.
to get this stuff out. And I appreciate that, because I just, a neighbor came over yesterday, and he's not a horse racing fan, but he's a big baseball fan. He was a star pitcher in high school, young, nice guy, 40s. And he just came over just to sit in the backyard. And I had sent him the Jerry Koosman only because he was interested in baseball. And he got the biggest kick out of that, and after he said that was just great. So yesterday he came over and we were just talking. And when he left, he said, I really liked that show. I said, well, I do one every week, but I'm going to spare you. That's the only one that you might get a kick out of. He said, but I will say this, you and your partner on there, you have a good yin and yang going. He said, you really go well together.
It's all you, Ray. It's,
And your show, you taught me how to use Zoom. I didn't even know how to use Zoom. So,
that's my contribution. I told you I use Zoom. You open a box and you talk is about it.
for me, it's hard. It was easier for me to kick the seat back of the Shah, the Princess of Iran's.
Let me ask you,
wife.
was that, people don't realize it, but back in the mid-70s, like that, a Cadillac was the ticket. You know what I mean? Today, not so much, but back then, a new Caddy was like, you know.
And that was the last year of this sedan.
Right.
He might have known that.
Was it a
So-
sedan? No, it's probably back then a Fleetwood Brougham.
No, it was called a sedan. It was a
Sedan
small-
DeVille. Okay. Oh, no, you're talking, was it the four-door Seville?
It was a smaller car. It
Okay,
wasn't
then it was the Seville.
whatever. It was the smallest of the Cadillacs.
Seville. Right.
But the seats, John, were perfect.
Yeah.
6 hours, 7 hours to Paris. The horse, I could see the horses' asses in front of me. They were all happy. I was happy. And as I said, not to repeat myself, if I had known, and this is the truth, I would have brought my Chambers Brothers and my Four Tops, my 8-tracks, because it had an 8-track player.
You'd have probably killed his battery. Leaving, we used to turn the ignition halfway forward and just put the radio on without running a car.
All right, so I went without the music, but it was the most comfortable ride.
Those cars had the tufted leather seats with the cushion. They had the cushion on the seat and on the back. I remember them very well.
I christened it for the poor girl. From me, this Italian kid from Brooklyn, to the
Sat in
princess.
the princess's car.
Huh?
You sat in the princess's car.
I broke it in for her.
Kind of,
Anyway, thank God they didn't find out. I'm telling you now, they were all gone, I guess. And I shouldn't say that, but I've said a few things on here, like the Mets autographs in Japan, the princess's car.
The statute of limitations on all that stuff has expired. I think you're okay.
With some people, legal statute of limitations, but you get some mad guy who bought an autograph for $200, or a cousin of the princess.
Anybody comes up with that autograph, I'll reimburse them. Don't worry about it.
How about the Kuzman? Cuzzman.
They don't get reimbursed. They deserve what they got if they didn't know how to spell Kuzman and bought it.
We'll see you next week, and I got a couple of gate stories.
Listen, we got gate stories.
On
We're going to do the ruffian story.
And the race of the century.
Yeah, we're going to do that.
Dr. Fager, Damascus, Buck Passer, and
the rabbit, right? What was the rabbit's name? Herd the rabbit.
Hedevar,
right. Hedevar.
Dr. Fager and Damascus ran against each other 4 times. Dr. Fager won twice. Hedevar wasn't in the race. Damascus won twice. Damascus won the Woodward and the Brooklyn. Hedevar was in there. Dr. Fager won the Gotham, and Hedevar was in the Suburban, but he came up lame the morning of the race. He was scratched, so Dr. Fager won the Suburban. 4 times. Dr. Fager won twice without Hedevar. Damascus won twice with Hedevar.
Possibly the best use of a rabbit over a campaign ever.
I think so. They even threw great power in the race in the Woodward, but I think those 3 horses and the race century, maybe we can spend the whole time on that. I was there. The little story behind. The picture that was taken that was in Sports Illustrated, and I just like Forrest Gump. I just was always in the right place at the right time.
And we're going to do a couple episodes where I pick your brain and get stories out of you that you don't even know you have. Because I'll ask you questions about things and you'll be like, oh yeah. Because I know you know things that you're not even thinking about talking about.
Well, maybe I don't want to remember some things,
That's possible. You could always take the 5th on this show.
Yeah, then I'm guilty. You take the 5th, they know. something. Thank you very much, John.
All right, Ray,
Hope it went well, and we'll see you next week.
we'll be in touch. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Nobody does it better.